With the release of the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1985, it looked as if the console gaming market would finally be revived after the infamous video game crash of 1983. And let's just be real, one of the crucial games that helped do that was the original Legend of Zelda, a total blockbuster that is widely appreciated today. But what if I told you another open-world adventure game like The Legend of Zelda was released shortly thereafter? One with an overhead view, dungeons, special items, and bosses. Well, it just so happens that it was. That game actually exists. The only problem is that it's totally forgotten today. Its name was the mysterious Murasame Castle, which was released in 1986. In this video, I'll tell you all about this obscure game, let you know whether it's worth playing today, and explain why it's so overlooked now. But before I get into all that, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more retro gaming content and classic gaming reviews like this one. The mysterious Murasame Castle was actually developed prior to The Legend of Zelda, but several delays caused it to be released afterward, and it was completely overshadowed by its more popular counterpart. It was actually released for the Famicom Disk System add-on, which Nintendo released in Japan only. The idea behind the system was to make the acquisition of games cheaper, and allow players the option to rewrite previous games on the same disc. Thankfully for all of us today, there is a complete English translation of the mysterious Murasame Castle, all thanks to the hard work of List Translations. Take a peek at the description below if you want to pick it up and give that a try. The gameplay is honestly pretty self-explanatory by today's standards, and there's not a ton of text, but it is still very helpful. The game's setting is Edo period Japan, where Murasame Castle contains a giant stone statue. One day, a shining golden object fell into the castle, which is actually an alien life form who brings the statue to life and takes over the region. The alien repeats the process in 4 other neighboring castles and summons legions of ninjas and monsters to attack villagers, and corrupts each castle's daimyo with an orb. And in response, Japan's shogunate turns to you. That's right, it summons a samurai apprentice named Takamaru to infiltrate the castles and put an end to the evil force. One could even go as far as to say he's, wait for it, the chosen one to do so. Unlike The Legend of Zelda, the gameplay here is much more linear. The map itself isn't extremely complex, and you don't have multiple directional choices to make on nearly every screen. In addition, unlike its cousin game, there's no screen side-scrolling and you just appear in the next area without any kind of visual transition. Your goal is to go from castle to castle, fighting your way through each area, defeating the daimyo bosses at the end, and collecting their orbs. I would say the most fun aspect of the gameplay was the use of multiple weapons, which was honestly a little unorthodox from an early era NES game like this one. But the way it works is actually pretty simple. If you stand next to an enemy, the B button will slash your sword, but this only works at close range. If you're far away from enemies, the same button will fling a dagger in the direction Takamaru is facing. Along your adventure, you can gain power-ups through these tanuki creatures, and this can give you weapon-changing effects like fireballs, a longer range dagger attack, and a lightning attack that destroys all enemies on the screen. There are also gift boxes that appear that contain special abilities that function much like the special items in The Legend of Zelda. These include items like the blue sandals, which allow Takamaru to run through water, or the shogi piece that allows you to hurl your projectiles in a 3-way spread. The mysterious Murasame Castle is by far more fast-paced than Zelda, because you don't toggle between items or collect rubies, and there's far more enemy projectiles flying around. The gameplay is just speedier and more arcade-like, if that makes any sense. Each stage contains an outdoor area and an indoor castle area that holds the boss. Just as in Metroid and Zelda, changes in color palettes and monster types are used to distinguish between different areas, and there are some dead ends as well. Takamaru can take 3 hits from enemies until he loses a life, and when this happens, you lose all of your power-ups and respawn in the same area. You can find extra lives scattered throughout the castles and special rooms, but these are few and far between. The difficulty of the enemies themselves differs drastically. Some are easy to take down quickly, some have tougher attacks that pose more of a challenge, and some even have shields that make them hard to hit. All this while many areas contain enemies that continue to respawn until you get to the next screen. You really have to be on your toes throughout the entire game, and the worst thing you can possibly do is stop moving entirely. After you've beaten all 4 castles and collected all 4 orbs, you face off against Murasame himself, which is a fun enemy encounter that differs from all the rest of the bosses. If you manage to defeat him, the game begins again, but unlike The Legend of Zelda's second adventure, this is just the same game again with ramped up difficulty. You may be surprised to learn that the soundtrack was the work of Koji Kondo, who would go on to achieve incredible fame as the composer of almost all Legend of Zelda games. I'd say the sound is actually pretty good too. Its catchy melodies will stick in your head, and even though there aren't that many tracks and they aren't nearly as memorable as those in The Legend of Zelda, it's Koji Kondo's work and it's really underappreciated today. In the end, the mysterious Murasame Castle is a really fun game that most of us missed out on. It combines the look of an early NES title with a creative idea. It just didn't stick around like its much more famous cousin. The game isn't even a Zelda clone, but it does represent a major part of the evolution of adventure games. And honestly, as I was doing the research for this video and playing through it, I felt it held up really well today. It's easy to pick up and play, and the fast-paced gameplay makes it stand out from a lot of other games. Unfortunately, it never had a sequel, and the mysterious Murasame Castle is virtually unknown, especially when it comes to North American gamers. It was finally released here on the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console in 2014, but it failed to make a major impact. By then it was probably too late. But I want to know what you think about the mysterious Murasame Castle. Would you have liked to play this one back in the day? Let me know in a comment below. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell for more retro gaming content. I'd also like to give a shout out to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members. If you want early access to the videos I produce and other perks like they receive, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a Patreon patron or via the YouTube Join feature.